December 19th, 1944. A command tent in Verdun, France. The air is thick with cigar smoke and despair. Hitler has unleashed his final, desperate gamble, the Battle of the Bulge. German panzer divisions have shattered the American lines, and the elite 101st Airborne is now completely surrounded, trapped, and freezing to death in the Belgian town of Bastogne. The Allied Supreme Commander, Dwight Eisenhower, turns to his generals. His face is grim. The 101st is about to be annihilated. I need a counterattack. How long will it take? One general says a week. Another, maybe 5 or 6 days, if the weather clears. Reorganizing and moving entire armies in the worst winter in memory seems impossible. Then, one man speaks up from the back of the room. General George S. Patton. I can attack in 72 hours. The room falls silent. You can hear a pin drop. Then, whispers turn to quiet smirks. The other generals think he's grandstanding, lying, that he's finally lost his mind. But this wasn't the promise of a madman. It was the opening move in the most audacious, high-stakes gamble of the entire war. A move that would either save the Allies or destroy Patton forever. To understand the madness of that promise, you have to understand the hell of the Ardennes forest. Hitler had thrown nearly 500,000 men and 1,000 tanks into a surprise attack, creating a 50-mile-deep bulge in the American front. The U.S. forces were in full retreat, communications were cut, and chaos reigned. At the center of it all was Bastogne, a critical crossroads town holding the line. If it fell, the Germans could split the Allied armies in two and drive them back to the sea. The men of the 101st Airborne were running out of everything: ammunition, food, medical supplies. They were fighting in frozen foxholes, surrounded by elite German panzer divisions. For them, Patton's promise wasn't a matter of pride. It was a matter of survival. So why did every other general think it was impossible? Because Patton's Third Army wasn't sitting idle. They were already engaged in heavy fighting, facing south. To attack north, Patton would have to pull 3 entire divisions, over 90,000 men and thousands of tanks, trucks, and artillery pieces out of an active battle, turn them 90 degrees, and march them 100 miles through a blizzard on icy roads. It was a logistical nightmare, a strategic fantasy. But Patton had a secret. This wasn't recklessness, it was obsessive preparation. For weeks, while everyone else focused on the battles in front of them, Patton had ordered his staff to create 3 separate, secret contingency plans for exactly this scenario. He told them, always have a plan for what you're going to do if the guy on your flank runs. While other generals saw a crisis, Patton saw the ultimate opportunity. His philosophy was simple. It's easier to redirect a flowing river than to start a still one. His army was already moving, already supplied. They just needed a new direction. When Eisenhower gave the call, Patton's staff didn't start planning from scratch. They pulled a ready-made plan off the shelf and gave the order. Go. What happened next was one of the greatest feats of military logistics in history. The command went out, and a river of steel began to turn. 90,000 men, in the middle of a war zone, in a blinding snowstorm, pivoted. Imagine the sound of thousands of tank treads grinding on frozen roads, the roar of countless truck engines, the sheer coordinated chaos of it all, moving as one massive spearhead. The German commanders on the southern flank of the Bulge were confident. Their intelligence told them Patton was still fighting miles to the south. They believed they had days, maybe a week, before any relief force could possibly arrive. They had no idea a sledgehammer was about to hit them from a direction they never thought possible. On December 26th, just 4 days after Patton's impossible promise, the impossible happened. The tanks of Patton's 4th Armored Division crashed through the German lines, shattering 3 elite panzer divisions that stood in their way. They broke the siege of Bastogne and linked up with the battered but unbeaten 101st Airborne. The victory wasn't just tactical, it was psychological. The German high command was stunned. The offensive they believed would win the war had been broken by an army that moved faster than the laws of war allowed. Hitler's last gamble had failed. The back of the Wehrmacht was broken, not by a long, grinding battle, but by the sheer audacity of one man's promise. Patton's 72-hour pivot didn't just save a single division. It triggered the collapse of Germany's entire Western Front and shortened the war by months. They called him reckless. They called him a madman. They laughed at his plan. But in the end, history called him a victor. And in the frozen forests of Bastogne, he proved that the line between genius and insanity is sometimes measured in hours.